Welcome back to Man vs. Meeple, the show where we talk about all things board game related. Today we're bringing you a Kickstarter preview. This is an upcoming game called Savage Planet, The Fate of Phantos by a brand new company called Imp House.
Imp House, yes, and this game, we've had this for a while now.
Yeah.
And these guys have put a lot of work into this. The artwork is the first thing that grabbed our attention on this thing.
Absolutely.
This is a tableau building, sort of competitive
/ a little bit cooperative going on as well.
There's some cooperation going on. There's some maybe alliances that you could table talk across the board, but that's not the gist of it. It's definitely a tableau building competitive card game for sure.
Yeah, so there's a big mythos behind the game. Each player is playing a competing citadel on a planet, Phantos, and there's been so much competition between gathering resources and war that now it's going to be destroyed by Zodras.
Zodras.
So there is a timer that's built into the game with these cards that will come out at the start of every single round, no matter what. But there's also ways to get the games, have these come out quicker as well.
Yeah, you can accelerate the trials deck depending on what actions you choose during the during your turn. But like Jeremy said, every round it's going to happen whether you like it or not.
Yeah, so within this deck are a bunch of different trials that players will go through cooperatively. In the bottom 4 of these will be Zodras, and they're hidden. Each player will have a player board in front of them. These player boards will dictate their abilities through the course of the game. Each one of them has a variable player power that they are good at. Each player will start with 30 health, which are represented by the shards. Now, this is a prototype version of the game. A lot of the cards that you're seeing here aren't finished. Of course, they don't have the colored sleeves. There will be different color shards that represent 5 denominations. Each player will start with 30 life, though, basically, and you're trying to chew down the other player's life through the course of the game. The game will end when either Zodras is summoned or if there's only one player left standing.
Yeah, this is definitely a game of survival. Like Jeremy said, you have 30 shards. You're going to be spending those, but you don't want to spend all of them because you'll die. And there is player elimination in this game, but it moves along at a pretty good clip because of that trials deck. But you're going to be spending some shards, you're going to be trying to gather more shards, basically just to keep yourself in that nice balanced area so you have enough to do some damage, but don't have so little that you end up getting eliminated.
3 more sets of components. There is a die in the game that's used for harvesting when you're collecting resources or the life into your pool. You'll be using the die here, the shard die. And then there's also, it's going to be used for war.
Yeah, you're going to use that for war. Basically, any of the 3 main actions of the game are going to use the die, but not rely on the die.
Right. At the start of the game, each player, like I said, will have 30 life, and then we will draft, basically, for your 3 starting legacy cards. These are summons that you'll be summoning in front of your player board and using both their ability and their 3 main attributes, Harvest, War, and Tribute, to modify the game in some specific way.
Yeah, and these legacies also act as a really interesting sort of middleman in the way the game works, because you're not always spending your shards from your citadel. You have to get the shards to your legacies as you hire them, and then the legacies are spending the shards off of their own cards. So they too can be eliminated by yourself by spending the shards. So it's not just a competitive thing, and it adds an interesting layer to how you manage the shards.
None of the trial cards will be available at the start. These will come out at the start of every round. There'll be 5 of the legacy cards available at any given time. As I said at the start, we're going to draft around the table until each player has 3. When you buy the legacies, you're actually spending your life according to whatever their cost is up in the upper right-hand corner, and acquiring these and putting that life upon these players. These act as their life points as well. Also, each player will have 5 labor cards. These are abilities that can be used during different phases in the game to give you special abilities at that particular time.
Yeah, they can usually enhance some of the actions that you'll take, or you can use them as reactionary cards to some actions that your opponents might be taking.
There's 6 phases in the game, starting with the first player. The first thing they do is they will untask all of the cards that they've tasked in a previous round. Now, anything that you use through the course of the game, you'll be tapping them or tasking them in this case. At the start of your turn, you're going to untask them, and then you're going to draw back up to 5 labor cards. You'll always have 5 at the start of your turn to be able to use. And then the meat of the game is the Phantos action, which is phase 2. That's when you get to do one of 3 different things. The very first thing you can do is harvest.
Yeah, the harvesting is how you're going to bring shards in most cases, to your citadel. So when you harvest, you're simply going to look down at your untasked legacies and choose any amount of those to task towards the harvesting action. Now, each legacy has base stats of harvesting, war, and tribute. So you're going to add up all of your base stats for harvest, on your task legacies. You're going to roll the shard die, add that to the total, and then simply take that number of shards from the pool over to your Citadel. Now, this can be enhanced, as with other actions, by tasking some of your legacies to bring out labor cards that might enhance that.
Yeah, and players can also interrupt that ability by playing instant cards that are from the labor cards they have in their hand as well. Also, the player is going to roll the die during that time and modify it with whatever comes up on the die and collect those, as David said. The second action you can take is War. This is when you're actually picking one of the players to fight against.
Normally, just to the left of you, you can fight that person. We'll get to tributes in a second, which allow you a little bit more flexibility. But War is always going to happen to the guy on your left. That's who you have to target.
When you attack that player, you're going to tap the characters that you wish to go to war. Again, it's the second stat down, and you're going to add up all the modifiers plus any labor cards you spend. Again, there's some timing in here and when you have to do things and when players have to respond to those things that you're doing. The defender then has the ability to also task at this point any of the defenders that they so wish to use. Each player is going to roll a die. Even if they don't task any players to defend with, they're still going to roll a die, and you're just adding up all of the points that you have. Now, if they have defenders, they're going to take damage from that, and then anything else will roll over onto their actual Citadel. And they don't have to choose to block with any of the characters with the legacies that they have in front of them. They can choose to take all the damage directly.
Again, it's all about management of the shards and the legacies, because there's going to be times where you have enough shards in the Citadel, you might want to go ahead and sacrifice some of those just to make sure that your legacies stay out on the board for your next turn.
The last thing you can do is Tribute.
Yeah, Tribute is an interesting thing because this is kind of like an all play, if you will. Everyone, when someone chooses the Tribute action, any player at the table may choose one of their untasked legacies to task towards the tribute. And this is basically going to be, again, comparing the tribute scores on each of the legacies, and it's only one per player. And then there's going to be a reigning tribute from that. So whoever ends up with the most tribute score is going to be the reigning tribute. And then what comes with that is some special abilities that, carry on through the game until someone else takes it. You're going to have the ability to have some control over the trial cards that are out on the table at any given time. You're going to be a tiebreaker when some of the trial cards ask for a vote. And the most important thing, I think, is when you go to war, if you're the reigning tribute, you can choose whoever you want to go to war with, not just the person on your left.
The other cool thing about being the tribute is when you win the tribute, you get to take that tribute from any player at the table. So if I win the tribute and I win with a score of 6, I can pick any of the players to take 6 life shards from. Once the player is done picking one of those 3 Phantos actions, then you go to the trials. Now, a trial doesn't happen on every player's turn. It only happens if a player chooses Harvest during the Phantos phase. If they don't choose Harvest, there will be no trials phase unless it's the first player's turn. There will always be a trial on the first player's turn for every round of the game.
Yeah, basically to force the game to progress if no one's choosing Harvesting. Harvesting is usually going to happen at least once around the table in a 4-player game, but yeah, you might have it happen twice.
Then the active player has a secondary action. Now, it needs to be noted that the Phantos action, where you get to pick one of those 3 things, only the active player can do that. During the secondary actions, which is the 4th phase of that player's turn, becomes the secondary actions. Anybody at the table can take part in this, and it's signified by one of the symbols on the cards. That can either be a part of one of your legacies or one of the labor cards that you have in front of you. And basically, you're summoning these things that come into play or using the ability. Anytime you use any of the labor cards, it needs to be noted that you're actually paying for the labor cards from the legacies that you have, but they have to be untasked, or straight up and down. You cannot pay for them with any of your tasked legacies. So it becomes very important deciding which characters or which legacies you wish to task, which you would want to leave untasked to pay for these things throughout the course of the round until they get back to your turn.
It becomes very interesting depending on what legacies you've sort of recruited. You could recruit some for their stats, but you might want to recruit some that just cost a lot so that you can get those shards out there and spend those for some of your labor cards. Because when you look at the labor cards at first, you're thinking, oh, I have this nice pool of shards here in the Citadel, but those are not used to play the labor cards, which is something you have to remember.
The 5th phase is that the player is allowed to hire 1 new legacy into their pool. When they hire a legacy, they pick from one of the 5 available legacy cards in front of them. And then they have to pay from their Citadel itself, not from any of their previous legacies. And they pay that, and when they pay it on top of the card.
Right.
So it's basically giving them life. And the cost is, of course, in the upper right-hand corner.
Exactly. And then you wrap up with phase 6, which is where you're going to discard any unwanted labor cards in your hand, because there's going to be some cards in your hand that may not work with the strategies you're using.
Yeah.
You're going to get rid of those. You have to keep in mind, you're not going to draw back up, though, until the start of your next turn. So just remember that it's going to go all the way around the table before you have labor cards in your hand to react
And those
with.
are really important cards, too.
They can be, for sure.
Do some very special abilities in the game. And then also during phase 6, you're going to take any of the trial effects that will take place. Most of these trial effects will affect 1 or 2 players at the table or give you a special ability if you vote in a particular way for it. Some of these will stay on the table. There's a limit of 3 of these on the table at any given time. Once a 4th one should come out, the tribute player is the one who gets to pick which one stays out, which may or may not affect them.
Yeah, exactly. And if there is no reigning tribute, it is the player whose turn it is.
Yeah. So you're going to keep playing around and around, as we said, until one of 2 things happens, until one player is left standing and the other players are dead, or until Zodras comes up and destroys everybody, basically.
Yeah. When Zodras comes up, everyone better be ready with some shards.
Yeah, and then you're just basically counting the shards that are left over in your Citadel. Player with the most wins.
Right.
And that, guys, is Savage Planet by Imp House Games. If this interests you, go out and back it. It's on Kickstarter right now. If you guys have any questions about the game, make them in the comments below. We'll make sure Travis, the designer, comes on and answers them.
I'm sure he will. I'm sure he will.
If you guys are going to be at Origins, make sure you guys find us. Ask us to play a game. Most certainly we'll do that.
We'll try anyway.
And subscribe to us. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and everything else that we do here at Man vs. Meeple. And we will catch you guys next time.
Bye-bye.
Season 1 of Man vs. Meeple is sponsored by our friends at TMG Games. And at Cool Stuff Inc. Cool stuff in stock at coolstuffinc.com.